Hey, all. Wanted to do a video on prop bets and DFS. If you read the forums over the years, there is some debate on whether prop bets are useful at all. And, I could see why. Prop bets haven't been that accurate, especially at retail sports books over the years. But I think they're sharpening up a bit, and some of that's probably through DFS players hitting them. Um, but I also think there's just inherently they are fairly predictive, especially when if you're a person who doesn't know a ton about the sport that you're gambling in. Clearly the prop bets are going to be better than your intuition. That's not saying that some expert couldn't beat prop bets. Obviously, somebody there's people out there who do. But I think there is some merit to them, and so I wanted to go over what to look at, and some things to consider when you're looking at prop bets. So the first thing you should look at is which sports book you're getting your bets from. Not all books are created equal. So some books are market leaders, and they are the ones who release the lines the earliest, and then all other books, they're generally called like retail books, copy those lines and just follow their lead throughout the day or the week, depending on the sport. And within those market leaders, there's leaders in specific sports even. So some books take more money or specialize in specific sports, right? So you kind of want to find those books, and they change over the years. But some things to look for is who's releasing the lines the earliest, how much, pay attention, watch them for a couple of weeks and see which ones are taking a lot of money and moving their lines throughout the day, which means they're getting hit. Some books don't ban sharp players, or they don't ban or limit them as frequently. You could Google a lot of this stuff too. But anyways, that's certainly something to keep in mind. The second one is which sport, and so the example I'm going to use here is basketball versus football, because this is probably the one that emphasizes what I'm getting at most here. Is in basketball, the information comes out so late all the time that a lot of times the prop bets become obsolete, and and sometimes they'll leave them up there, which could screw you up even more. Especially with a retail book, where they'll just not take the line down because they don't care. They'll just ban anyone who's good, and then you're sitting there betting a bad line. Versus so that's versus football, where the news information is not nearly as volatile as the NBA, right? We basically know who's going to play each week. There's always a couple question marks, but then they usually don't even put the prop bets up for those guys. So, in football, we'll release the line, at least a day earlier, maybe 2 days earlier, or more, depending if the player is really big and what book it is. And so they're going to be taking money, for days, adjusting their line, right? It's going to become a lot sharper by game time compared to basketball, which only has that day of. And who knows what news can change that line. So that's something to keep in mind. Thirdly, the type of bet, and this will be kind of the whole crux of this video, is the type of bet matters. Some of them you won't even be able to use. But let's start with ones that you could theoretically use. Even though this is basketball, this is the line I had and from last night, and that's the only sport going really besides hockey. So Kawhi Leonard here, his points prop was 28.5, but it really wasn't, because one, there's an over/under on this prop. And two, they always have VIG associated with any bet, right? They have to, pay to keep the lights on and make profit, so they charge you to bet on their platform. So the over/under in terms of standard probability here. I'll show you the formula. You can Google this; it's pretty easy to find. The over of 107 turns to an over probability of 48.3. The under is 58.5. But if you sum those, you can see that there's a vig associated with it, because typically it should be 100%, right? Like a coin flip would be 50-50. But if you did a coin flip at a sports book, it would be like 55-55. Total probability would be 110, which means they're taking 10%. So you can convert this by simply dividing the odds by the vig. So this is your true probability for the over-under on these specific bets, right? And then you're going to have to figure out a way to adjust these to reflect the over-under and the true over-under, right? Because Kawhi's just, he'd be like 27.8 here or something like that. And, the way to do that would be a huge video. And maybe some year down the road I'll do something like that. But either way, this is how you're going to kind of price this prop if you were going to bet on it. And also if you're going to look at it from a DFS perspective. The odds do matter. And the bigger just a rule of thumb, the bigger the number, and also if it can be a stat where a lot of yards can be accumulated, like a quarterback passing prop, over under could be like 15 yards or 20 yards depending on the difference here, and less so the smaller the number and the less frequent of the event of the bet. So another type of bet that matters, and this is what I was talking about, where some of these you won't be able to use. And so in hockey, in MLB, this comes up frequently, and that's why I have this double-double saved. So in hockey, in MLB, and there's, probably tons of bets out there, they'll have props for like home runs or goals scored or blocks in hockey, the player blocks, not goalie blocks. Those aren't going to be useful for you or super useful for you unless you manipulate the data somehow, because the way they prop them, the way they price those props is more like a double-double. So it's easier to see when a double-double here is binary event, right? Either the player gets the double-double or he doesn't. He can't get two double-doubles, right? He can only get one double-double or zero double-doubles. So this true probability of 31.7 double-double for Kawhi Leonard would actually be useful in a NBA model. You could just plug that right in to figuring out the double-double bonus on DraftKings. In hockey or MLB, it wouldn't be that useful because they're looking at hockey goals or MLB home runs as a binary event. But in DFS, once the player hits a home run, he could hit another, right? But they don't care about that. Once the event occurs, the bet's paid out and they move on. So the probability of the event occurring will be higher with a player more likely to hit two home runs in a game, but it won't give you a realistic DFS expectation. I hope that makes sense. That they're pricing them as like a double-double. And so there's I can't name every single bet out there. There's tons of them. So keep that in mind. Like what am I looking at here? What can I find that's actually useful? Like theoretically points, passing yards in the NFL would probably be the most accurate one. And then there's one last bet type that I want you to keep in mind here. And it's the bet type where there is no under, right? There's no feedback mechanism. So if they priced, let's say, Justin Thomas here at 650 to 1, the probability there is 13.3% convert, but it's not adjusted for VIG, right? We'll get to that in a second. If, let's just say, that Thomas is way worse than that, you have no opportunity to bet the under. So they're basically just taking square money on these lines, right? They're just taking square money, and if they get hit hard enough by a sharp, they'll adjust on the over, but they'll never adjust. They don't ever have to adjust on the under. And I think in some states, I think it's not states, some countries, this sort of only over betting is illegal. Actually, I could be wrong about that, but they're trying to protect the consumer. But here's another thing to keep in mind on this: is when there's no under, oftentimes what happens, and this is from the Hero Championship, I think I saved these odds, is on these type of bets, the sum of probabilities, the vig can get huge, right? Which makes it even less accurate. So there's almost 22 points of vig on this one, and sometimes I've seen some where it's like 140, 160, 160%. Just tons of vig, and so and you can't. There's no under, so the sharp money can't bet the line to be more accurate. And so, I don't know how you could just think for yourself, how useful is that information going to be, right? So that's pretty much all I want to talk about. But to sum it up, it depends on what prop you're looking at. It depends on what book you're getting the information from. Some of the props you're not going to want to use at all, right? So just a blanket statement of props are not useful, I think is wrong, and a blanket statement the other way, I think is wrong too. There's a little more information you need before you can answer that question. But it's definitely worth something worth taking a look at. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. Have a good one.